Welcome to Gospel Tangents, the best source for Mormon history, science, and theology. I'm Rick Bennett. In our next conversation with Joe Geisner, we're going to be talking about Juanita Brooks. Did she destroy her own diary? We're going to talk more about that. Are historians hypocrites? We want to see others' diaries, but do we want others to see ours? You won't want to miss this conversation. And oh, by the way, this is your last chance to win a free copy of Writing Mormon History Volume 1. Go to gospeltangents.com/contest, and I'll be giving away a copy of this book right here. Also, I want to point out that in our next episode, Joe's going to give the introduction to Writing Mormon History Volume 2, which is going to be released this week. So you won't want to miss this conversation.
These last two, these are the two great Mormon historians. And we've talked quite a bit about them throughout this paper. We've talked about them as being amazing, everything about them. You know, I never got to know Juanita Brooks. By the time I became interested in the new Mormon history, she was in a rest home and had severe dementia. And she died shortly after. And Mike Quinn, you know, I had a friendship with him from 1981, you know, till he died. And so anyway, this is the two great Mormon historians. From there, now this first is from Lindsay Hanson Park's forthcoming volume that's going to be published by the University of Utah Press. And Lindsay writes beautifully, as you'll see from this. Few writings of this, and I'm quoting Lindsay's book, but she has intermittent quotes from Juanita Brooks. Few writings of this time exist because she, and this is Juanita Brooks's early life, desperately tried to conceal her pain. Emblematic of a new marriage, Juanita began this chapter of her life with a new journal to record her thoughts in. On June 27, 1933, she opened the first entry with tepid despair. I don't know whether I dare begin another diary or not. She explained that she had earlier kept a diary for 2 years, writing only the things that mattered to her, to conceal nothing and to be honest with herself. She wanted it to be a record of her inner life. But shame got the best of her. After I had nearly 200 pages, I became panicky, lest someone should get it and read it, she later confessed. Because it was most intimate, the only recourse was to burn it to ashes. There wasn't a soul in the world, she justified, to whom I would have shown it. Now I began one equally as futile. And yet she lamented that she still had to write, as I have no other safety valve. As a Mormon and a burgeoning researcher, Juanita understood how her religious community encouraged everyone to be a record-keeping people. Her propriety, however, demanded something else. Juanita felt a deep nakedness about revealing her emotions to anyone but herself. Her honest thoughts weren't fully integrated with her outer life. Her path increasingly placed her in position to probe more authentic, honest, and raw history, and yet her heart and experiences sought exceptions for her own life. Destroying the diary erased the historical record of her true feelings. What remained was the scattered elegy of a woman struggling in her new role as wife and mother in a blended family. One other thing.
Well, let me ask you this really quick. Because, you know, as
just let that sink in, right?
Yeah. But as historians, we love it when we can get journals, but are we hypocrites because we don't want anybody to see our own?
Yeah, Gary always asked me, he said, Joe, are you going to let your journals? And I said, I'm going to be dead. I don't care. And seriously, I'm going to be dead, you know. So, I mean, I'm not a really good journal keeper. I only write down what I want to write, which is usually conversations like with Eldred Smith or something, you know. I'll write that kind of stuff down. Mike Quinn, you know, I'd write down, you know, our conversations. But beyond that, I'm not a great, you know, I don't write my personal stuff, and maybe because I've done enough research. My letters, my mission letters, I won't even read them. You can ask my wife. You can ask my wife. I refuse. And there are love letters between the two of us because we actually knew one another before my mission.
Oh.
I will not read them. I'm so embarrassed about what I wrote that I will not look at them. And she's, she goes, these are letters I've cherished. And it's like, I don't even want to look at them.
See, and I'm going to tell you this. So I interviewed Richard and Claudia Bushman. And Claudia said to me, Rick, are you keeping a journal? And I was like, I'm not, Claudia. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you are. You're keeping one on.
Yeah, but, I always try to keep my personal feelings.
I know. Yeah.
So, there's nothing to burn, first of all. But secondly, when I did keep a journal, like on my mission or even when I was a teenager, or actually, I will say this. I think it was about the 5th grade, we were supposed to keep a journal. And this is how my journal was. Today was Sunday. I went to church. Cowboys 28, Steelers 6, or Dodgers 7, Yankees 4, or whatever. It was just scores.
Those are actually way better than mine because mine are, went tracting today.
Well, and then I was
not happy.
On my mission, I wrote when things were really bad, and they're going to think this guy's just depressed all the time.
That's what mine. When you read mine sound like I'm manic depressive.
Well, it's exactly, and that's why I don't want to read them. Yeah. But every time I wrote, it was when I was upset, and when things were good, I didn't write, and so they're going to get a really skewed opinion of me, especially if they just read. And I will say this. Well, I was just telling somebody at Sunstone, I don't even remember her name, but she goes, "Here's this little thing. Just write like 3 sentences every day."
Right.
And I was like, "Oh, I'm going to have to do that." But my dad passed away in 2018, and he had written, by the time he was younger than me, than my current age, had written 2 life histories.
Wow.
And it was great.
Wow.
It was really helpful for the funeral.
Wow.
And it did inspire me to write a life history, but I wrote too much, and I only got up to my mission, and then I've gotten busy.
And then you just right.
Which was all the depressing stuff.
Right.
Although I tried to be a little bit reflective, but
Well, I write actually both the forthcoming volume of Writing Mormon History and this writing. Matter of fact, this
we need to talk about this book too, and it's already been I'm trying to look here, 2.5 hours.
Well, people are bored out of their mind, I'm sure. But I do write some personal stuff. My first meeting with Leonard Arrington.
Oh, okay.
I write about that and stuff. So,
okay.
We
do spend a couple.
So I try. So there's at least, something there, but missionary journals,
they're hard.
And they're not very interesting most of the time. I've read a lot of them.
Oh, really?
Though the Hawaiian mission journals, a little bit different story.
You're talking about Joseph F. Smith.
Well, all of them, Francis Hammond, all those guys. They actually kept George Buchanan's Hawaiian journal, and they, we're getting off topic again. But the George Buchanan Hawaiian journals are so fun because what the missionaries would do in their conferences that the missionaries had, they would get together and they had journal parties and they would share journals. And what the fun part is on that is George Buchanan journals are redacted in certain things. There's a whole excommunication of the most important Hawaiian in the Hawaiian mission. And because he's out going through Lahaina, he's hitting every whorehouse and bar in the process. And then he confesses and they have to excommunicate him. So there's this whole write-up that's all redacted from the George Buchanan journals. You go to the other Hawaii missionary journals, the entire details, because they were copying each other's mission journal. And so you have the exact account, word for word, that George Buchanan would have had redacted. is in the other missionary journals.
Oh, wow.
It's fun. That's what makes Mormon history fun, is because when the church is trying to cover something up, it's like putting fingers in the holes, of a boat, or in the boat, because that boat's going down. And so they're all, they got all these people at the church history library trying to plug those holes. And the problem is there's a leak over there that nobody can reach, and so it's still leaking information. My friends at the church history library are not going to be very happy about me right now. But anyway, so that's what they did. So, so pretty much everything that they redact in George Buchanan's journals, Hawaiian journals, you can find in other journals. Almost everything.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So,
because wasn't your presentation to redact or not to redact?
Yeah, that is the question.
See, so I remember.
That is the question.
Yes, that was a good presentation.
I was playing around with Shakespeare. I can't remember. Somebody said to me, "That's a really dumb title," and I told Lindsay Hansen Park. She goes, "I love the title. Leave it."
Yeah, it was good. I liked it.
Yeah, so
I was there.
Yeah. Well, the other great Mormon historian, D. Michael Quinn. This comes actually from the published memoirs of the signature books just did, and so you can read this in that. Okay. So I'm pretty sure it's all in there. Because I added some of Mike's diaries to different things too.
This is Michael Quinn you're talking about.
Mike Quinn, sorry, Mike Quinn. So, but this is from, I'm pretty sure, and I really highly recommend people get that memoir of that Signature just published. It's a wonderful.
I haven't had a chance to read that one yet.
Yeah, and neither have I either. But I've read a bit. I've read things that interest me. So Mike writes, he says, I think that in some ways, this talk with Bart led to my decision to remove any hint of homosexuality from the personal journals I had kept daily from age 18 until after my mission. My bride, who by the way is Jan, my bride was willing to type them in an edited form to conceal the real purpose. I told Jan that I wanted to remove all the boring stuff, as well as certain entries about other people. In fact, I did line through all the routine stuff and the negative comments about other people. More important, though, to me, I lined through the many indirect references to my homosexuality. This included my comments about being different from other guys, my fasting and praying to change, my frequent depression. I asked Jan not to read the sections I deleted, and bless her heart, she also agreed to that request. These deletions totaled 3/4 of my original journals.
Wow.
Yeah. After 4 years of on and off typing, and Jan was, Mike was a phenomenal typer. Jan ran circles around Mike in typing.
Wow.
So this had to have been one heck of a lot of pages, okay? Right. So anyway, so after 4 years of on and off typing, Jan completed the edited version of my journals. It had been a labor of love, but she objected when I said that I would now destroy the originals. She said that I might change my mind about the need to delete 3/4 of the entries. I countered that I wanted my children and others to read the edited diaries as a faith-promoting record of my life. I didn't want them to be distracted by all the boring stuff or the unkind things I had written about other people. One evening, I tore up every page of my original journals into small pieces and threw them in the dumpster of our apartment building. Jan just shook her head. It wasn't long before I realized she was right. I also saw the historical irony of a decision I soon regretted. As a result, the personal journals I kept daily from the next year onward were increasingly candid and detailed. But irretrievably lost were those daily notations that demonstrated a fuller view of me as a teenager and young adult. Both God and the devil are in the details, and I should have allowed the future readers of my youth's original diaries to decide where they saw one's influence or the other, or perhaps both. Too late, my awareness, which I've tried applying in this self-biography, let the chips fall where they may. It broke my heart when I read, and obviously I didn't read this until after Mike's passing because it wasn't available.
Right.
As a matter of fact, we're very lucky that wasn't lost because Mike had written it. Mike was not much at computers, but he worked hard to learn, and he and I could share. I was always sharing stuff with him. He was always sharing stuff with me. Matter of fact, my complete thing of the George Buchanan I sent him, though I don't know if he ever even looked at it because he was so mad about the redactions. He was mad. He was so mad about those. And so he said, I don't know if I could ever look at them because of what the church did, But yeah, so anyway, tough to read.
Yeah.
Tough to read. Yeah. And it breaks your heart because you know that if you just listen to Jim. Now,
so write your journal and don't destroy it.
And don't destroy them. That's right. We've talked about those that have been lost. There is a common, I like to, my goal is to check and see if we're right about things. If what we're saying, and even my good friend Will Bagley, who I found to be an amazing historian and one of the great intellects that I've ever experienced, made mistakes. And I would tell Will, he would say things that would irritate me. And I would say, Will, you can't say that. You're going to hurt somebody's feelings. And Will, for all of his,
a lot in the Facebook group on the Mormon historians.
for a lot of the things that Will would say that were bad, at least he admitted that they were bad and often apologized. And so, yeah. And I appreciate Will for that. But Will said to me often and to others that Kate Carter, and Will wasn't the only, but I'm using Will because I respected Will so much. But Will would say that Kate Carter of the DUP would destroy records. And so I always believed that Kate Carter had done that. And so when I was doing this paper, that was one of the things I looked into. And because, I had been told that Kate Carter had destroyed records. So I wanted to know what those records were. And it's untrue. And when I dug into it, the reason I know it's untrue is, first of all, because the source that everybody uses is Juanita Brooks condemning Kate Carter and the DUP for editing and censoring documents, but she never uses the word destroy. Richard Saunders then looked into that, and Richard's a brilliant historian, a good friend of Will's, just like I was, and wrote 2 volumes or edited 2 volumes of the Kingdom in the West series about Dale Morgan, and actually just came out with a biography of Dale Morgan, who really is the great Western historian. Dale Morgan was truly an amazing person and was Juanita Brooks's mentor. And so Richard looked into it and found a letter that Kate Carter wrote in which she says, she admits that she censors and edits for publication, but she makes it clear that she never destroyed the document.
Okay.
So, that puts that to rest. That she never did that. So that I think that's important. That it be clear, that she didn't do that. Okay. This is just a list for all of us. This is again from Mike Quinn to me. He said that when it comes to fundamentalists, missing journals and other records. So now these people, like Judson Tolman was a patriarch, okay? But all of his journals to 1912 and his records are all gone. Most likely the family destroyed them. Okay. Judson Tolman was one of the matter of fact, he was brought before the Quorum of the 12 and was just hammered over his performing plural marriage into the 1900s, 19-teens. Okay. So anyway, and he has a connection with Heber J. Grant. That's an interesting one, because he is the patriarch under Heber J. Grant's brother in the stake that his brother is the stake president of. So these guys are all, I mean, it's just new plural marriage, which is what Lindsay and Brian are really working on. It's like what Mike Quinn said when he read his new plural marriage and church authority. He actually read the entire thing to Gordon Hinckley in his office, or maybe he read extracts of it. Yeah, I don't think he read all 110, but he read a lot of it and listed all the people. And he said Hinckley just sat there with his mouth to the floor and was like, "You got to be kidding me! She babysat me. You got to be kidding me! She was my mom's best friend. She was, or that, that was my dad's friend, or I mean, he had no idea that he was surrounded with new plural marriage people. Yeah. No idea that they had been married after the manifesto. So anyway, back to the list. Okay, so John W. Woolley, Lawrence C. Woolley, Daniel R. Bateman, Samuel Eastman, Joseph Musser, Henry Tanner, Nathan Clark, Joseph Silver, David Jeffs, LeGrand Woolley, John Burt, John Barlow, John Leslie Broadbent. At least some, if not all of some of those people's journals. Now Musser's journals. Those
are all big names in fundamentalism.
Yeah. And Musser, and Brian Buchanan and Christina Rossetti are doing a scholarly edition of the Musser journals. So they've got quite a bit, but there are some.
Christina announced her retirement on my podcast.
Yeah, I know.
She's still
I'm so sad.
Leaving, but she's not gone yet.
I'm sad. I adored Christina. Christina, that's really bad of you.
I agree.
I'm disappointed in you. You need to return.
Just come back.
Yeah.
I told her it was fine to take a year off or something.
That's right. That's right. Now this one I found, and the only reason I picked it up is this one I found in Leonard Arrington's diary. And it's just weird. It's just a very, very weird account. Is Mathony Wood Pratt, Mary Christensen, 34, who works in the Lion House, came in this afternoon to ask about the marriage record of her mother and father. Her father was Mathony Pratt, the youngest son of Parley Pratt. He had married two women before now this is Mathony. Parley's already dead, obviously, but his father's dead. So she's now talking about her father. He had married two women before the manifesto in 1890. According to her, as told by her mother and father to her, her father was called in by church authorities in 1902 and asked to carry on the principle of plurality of marrying another wife. He did marry a third wife, Elizabeth Sheets, I think, and she, Mary Christensen, is a child of that marriage. Then, of course, occurred the Manifesto of 1904, which ended these marriages approved by officials of the church. Mary was born in 1903, apparently. Sister Christensen has never been able to find any record of that marriage. Her father's papers were all burned except one record book. This is where it's the lost document, which gives a date of the marriage, and the place says EH, and I can't remember who EH is. This could not mean, okay, that's what it is. I'm sorry, it's not a person. Her father's papers all burned except one record book, which gives a date for the marriage and for the place as EH.
Which is Endowment House.
Which Leonard is going, this could not mean the Endowment House.
Oh.
Because the Endowment House was torn down before that, which is also accurate. But what it could be is they dedicated a place to be an endowment.
A temporary.
Yeah, a temporary. So that's what Leonard's speculating. Perhaps it meant some building near Temple Square, which served as an temporary endowment house. So Leonard's now, which is a very good possibility, actually.
I mean, you know that with the Salt Lake Temple renovation, or maybe you don't, because normally they have that big assembly room that the former 70 apostles meet in, but they're remodeling it, which irritates me. But anyway.
You and every other person cares about history.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they've dedicated a room. Well, the Hotel Utah is now called the Joseph Smith Building.
Right.
But they've dedicated a room so that they can meet in there while the temple is.
No, they can't do that. They serve coffee and cigarettes and all kinds of things.
Cigarettes?
Yeah. Yeah, they used to have a machine in there. You could buy the cigarettes.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know about that. But yeah, I'm sure they keep the
No,
cigarettes
and they had a bar too.
Well, remember the Hotel
No,
Utah.
I don't believe you, Rick.
So anyway.
They couldn't dedicate. No. Anyway, love sacred space. Love sacred space. So anyway. Okay. Mary is certain based on what her parents told her that the marriage took place in Salt Lake City. She is also certain that Joseph F. Smith, as president of the church, was aware of the marriage and approved it because at the time the marriage he gave Mary's mother and father a portrait of Joseph Smith, which also conveys his signature and best wishes. This would suggest that perhaps a group of people were called to practice polygamy by Joseph F. Smith or by someone designated. Now, I'm writing this, first of all, because it's fascinating, because Leonard's finally going, oh, wait a second. There really was new plural marriages. Because Mike had told him this stuff, but I think Leonard was reluctant to believe it. And now all of a sudden he's got...
All right, so we know we got cut off there. Like I said, my phone battery died, but we were running on a charger, but of course, hopefully the volume sounds okay. We don't know. We're using the cell phone thing here, but we've got here, and hopefully Joe said everything he was going to say.
Yeah.
There are no more lost manuscripts that he's aware of.
That's right. That's right.
There's plenty that he's not
There
aware
will
of.
be, right. Yeah.
But we want to spend a couple minutes on writing Mormon history, and I'm taking off the shrink wrap right now, and Joe's going to sign it. But I thought we could just kind of go through. Joe's going to just give a very brief overview of this book, and he's going to share something with us, right?
Sure.
Okay.
That sounds good to me.
There you go.
So,
and those pens are terrible. The Marriott pens are terrible.
Okay. And I will use short pen.
Hopefully it's okay too.
The authors for this book is
Joe's
really...
the editor.
I'm the editor. With the help of Signature Books.
Yeah.
I'm not that good. But Signature Books is.
Mm-hmm.
But this is really this first volume, somebody was saying to me today, they could not believe the quality of this. And it really is. It's a who's who. And unfortunately, we've lost three of the people that have chapters. And thank goodness, though, we still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 5 of the authors are still. It's just no. There's more than that. I'm sorry. I don't know what I was.
That
thinking.
was on the first page.
Yeah. So that was 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So there's 14 authors in this book. Volume 2 is going to have 18 authors.
Which comes out in
17
October.
chapters, but 18 authors, because 2 of the authors write 1 chapter.
Okay.
So, but this is Paul Aird, Will Bagley.
Who we've lost.
Todd Compton, I'm going to let you say that part. Brian Hales, Melvin Johnson, William McKinnon, Linda King Newell.
We just barely lost her.
Greg Prince, Craig Smith, George D. Smith, Vicky Cleverly Speak, Susan Staker, Daniel Stone, and John Turner. And where's D. Michael Quinn in there? Oh, right there. Sorry, I missed Mike.
Mike Quinn.
Mike Quinn. Right. So who we've lost. So of those 15, we've lost 3. Mm-hmm. And but that's really a who's who.
Yeah, it really
I mean, that really is an amazing group of people.
Several gospel tangents guests on it.
And as I said in when we were talking about personal journals and writings, my introduction is pretty intimate. So let me sign this. Here we go.
All right. So there's a signed copy. This book is for one of you. Go to gospeltangents.com/contest. Were you going to share the introduction?
Yeah. I mean, this is the first time.
Yeah.
This is the first time ever
publicly.
in public now I got to get my fun laptop, which I really am horrible at using.
I usually like to read the book before I talk to the guests, but these are all fantastic authors, and kind of the purpose of the book was just to talk about the books you've written. Yeah. And so. Yeah, and this really is. This is a beautiful thing. Meaning, everybody who has read this book, which is, well, here's an experience I had at MHA in Cleveland. I had multiple, and what was fun was they were young people. They weren't old people like me, They were young scholars. And they said every single one of them said things to me like, you're writing Mormon history. So you're doing the introduction for Mormon History 2, which is coming out in October. That's coming out. Oh, I was thinking October 28th. Okay. Yeah. So this is what I'm saying. That anybody can read. Yeah. So this is the first time in public, Mormon History 2. Or excuse me, writing Mormon History 2. Yes. Yeah. And so but every single one of them basically said the same thing, that writing Mormon history changed their academic life. Every single story there taught them something about being a researcher, being a historian, being a writer, all of those things. Talk about making me feel good. I mean, that is something. And it's exciting to see these young people fascinated with something that I was able to be a part of. Yeah. This is the introduction. I've had a few people say this is heartbreaking, but this was important for me to write.
The year 2021-2022 was a period of painful loss in my world of friends and family. I lost my beautiful wife of 39 years, my stepfather who raised me, my uncle, and my brother-in-law, all people who played major roles in my life. The Mormon history and book communities lost many people that same year as well. Those who passed away and had the greatest impact on me were D. Michael Quinn, Hugh McKell, Kurt Bench, and Will Bagley. Two, Quinn and Bagley wrote chapters for the first volume of Writing Mormon History. I will forever be grateful they were able to be a part of that book and that readers have access to their story. I met Mike Quinn in 1981. I had just returned from a 2-year LDS mission in the Denver area and started back to school that fall. The Mark Hoffman document, the Joe Smith III blessing, which was later shown to have been forged, had been made public earlier in that year, and Mike took on the task of putting the document and its text in historical perspective. I recall sitting in the DeJong Hall on the campus of Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, mesmerized by Mike, explaining what the blessing meant to a believing Mormon and how God had guided Brigham Young to lead a large body of Joseph Smith's followers in 1847 to what would become Utah. I was hooked. I told Mike decades later about my being at this lecture. It actually couldn't have been that many decades, but anyway. Mike laughed and said, yeah, the lecture I gave where nobody showed up. Unfortunately, this was true, but I think it gave him some consolation when I told him about the effect of his lecture on me that fall. The last time I talked with Mike was in January 2021. He was being safe with COVID-19, only going out to buy groceries once a month and anticipating getting his vaccine. Mike passed away 3 months later, on or about April 22nd, from a heart attack. I learned of Salt Lake City bookseller Kurt Bench when I was attending the 1988 Sunstone West in Concord, California. One of my friends introduced me to Ann Wild and her husband, Ogden Kraut. Ann saw in me someone who craved a place where I could buy Mormon scholarly books. And she happened to work at a new bookstore in Salt Lake City near the old Rio Grande train station. Ann gave me a card bearing the Benchmark Books address and telephone number. I made my first of dozens of treks to Kurt's bookstore and later his store on Main Street. I spent hours with Kurt, regaling me about his experiences with various authors, various first edition books, various hard-to-find books, and Mark Hoffman. The last time I saw Kurt was at the Salt Lake City Sunstone Symposium on July 30th, 2021. We talked about how much he enjoyed writing a blurb for the first volume of Writing Mormon History and how much he enjoyed reading the book. On Monday, August 1st, Kurt texted me that he had forgotten to have me sign his personal copy of the book. I replied that I was leaving for home, but could swing by his store on my way out of town. He got busy and did not text me until I was 30 miles west of Wendover, Nevada. Kurt's final words were to me, I'll have you sign the book the next time you're in Salt Lake City. Kurt died from a congenital heart defect a little more than 2 weeks later, on August 17th. On June 11th, 2021, I received a copy of a fine press book published by Bear Hollow Books, owned and operated by my friend Hugh McKell. The book, titled Jacob's Reminiscences, is a little-known short history written by Lynn Jacobs about his experience with Mark Hoffman. Hugh published 100 copies, a relatively common number for fine book world. I called Hugh that day to let him know my copy had arrived and to tell him that he had published another beautiful book. My call went to voicemail. I tried to reach him again on Saturday, and again my call went to voicemail. I found out later that day that Hugh had passed away a few days earlier. Hugh taught me to love fine books and to have as my goal to buy books that were in very good or better condition and with dust jackets if possible. Hugh would often sell me his duplicate copies. Many of my most prized books were once owned by Hugh. Each in very good condition. All are important. On Saturday, September 29, 2021, at 1 p.m., I received a text from John Gary Maxwell, author of Utah History and Biography works, also a well-known surgeon, that our mutual friend Will Bagley had passed away. A short time later, Mike Homer, one of the authors in this volume, texted me about Will's passing. Then Laura Bear, Will's wife, called as well, and we had a healing talk about Will's final days. He had a massive stroke that took his life. Will had battled type 1 diabetes for decades and knew his life was tied to this disease. In fact, Will and I had talked about this, including on his birthday in 2010, when I was privileged to celebrate with him. Will asked me to find a place where he could have a traditional San Francisco Bay Area seafood dinner. Since Will was staying in Berkeley, we went to Springer's Fresh Fish Grotto, where Will ordered the Dungeness crab dinner. One of the beauties of having a Dungeness crab dinner, in my opinion, is that it takes 2 to 3 hours to complete the meal. This leaves a lot of time to talk. Though he wore a bib, Will managed to get crab juice all over himself. He was quite the sight. The last time I saw Will was on July 31st, 2021, in his assisted living apartment building in the Salt Lake Valley. I had picked him up earlier in the day and had taken him to his home in the Avenue neighborhood, where Connell O'Donovan, another author in this volume, Laura, Will, and I ate lunch. It was a wonderful day. We had an incredible time. Will was excited to get back to his apartment because he was scheduled to play chess. After dropping Will off, I realized I had forgotten to have him sign my advanced reading copy of River Fever 2019. Will's memoir of the several years he spent as a young man on the Mississippi and other rivers. I returned to his apartment building and found him in the top floor recreation area playing chess in front of a wall-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the stunning Rocky Mountains. I walked over and asked Will to sign my book. He introduced me to his chess-playing friend and said that I was a Mormon historian who was doing good things. I told this friend that Will was a great Mormon historian and had been my teacher and mentor. Will said, "Joe, many people have been your mentor." I said, "Yes, and I am lucky to have you as well as many others." This proved to be our final exchange. I know this is not a typical editor's introduction, but if it were not for these 4 people, Writing Mormon History, edited by myself, would not exist. Many other people have been a part of the process of my historical education, but these 4 were mentors in my life of Mormon studies. Not to remember them in this editor's introduction to the second volume of Writing Mormon History would, for me, be an egregious moral failing. As I wrote in the introduction of the first volume of Writing Mormon History, I seek to be inclusive, and in some ways, I think I accomplished this in Volume 2. In other ways, however, I fear I may have fallen short. The most glaring omission in the first volume were persons of color. In the second volume, readers will discover Elisa Polito's essay about her award-winning book on the life and thought of Margarito Batista, a Hispanic prophet and religious innovator. Elisa writes about her experience in the intriguing area of Mormonism and the life of all but forgotten important figure. Alice Faulkner Birch has a chapter about her award-winning book as well, My Lord, He Calls Me, Stories of Faith by Black American Latter-day Saints. Additionally, we have P.J. Hafen and Brendan W. Rensnick chapter on their collaboration of essays called Essays in American Indian and Mormon History. This volume is an award winner as well. Also included here is Roger Lanius' essay about African American people in the Community of Christ, formerly our LDS Church. Roger begins with a traumatic yet enlightening childhood experience, then reveals his search for those mostly invisible restoration saints. I am quite pleased with these chapters and the effort to create a racially diversity in the volume. Another area I helped to feature was the experience of an openly gay historian and their work in documenting the LGBTQ plus community in Mormonism. Thankfully, Connell O'Donovan provides an essay that brings readers into his world of pioneering research and writing on this previously neglected history. Connell's work has appeared in monographs, on websites, and in journals. His studies are often cited by scholars and historians. The present volume also opens up readers to the contributions of Mormon women and their significant organizations. The Women's Relief Society. Jo Mulvey Durer narrates the story of Writing Women of Covenant. This history, released by the LDS Church publishing arm, Deseret Book, functions as a near-official history of LDS women. Jill takes readers through the process of writing such a history and offers the important insider's perspective. Additionally, Bernadette Rizal-Salard, one of the best-known specialists of new religious movements in France, academia, details her experience as an outsider of Mormonism in peeling back Mormonism's many layers to discover what lies close to the heart of this very American religion. Continuing the theme of outsider perspectives, William Moraine, a member of and historian of the RLDS Community of Christ tradition, gives readers insight into studying the early life of Mormon church founder Joseph Smith, especially Smith's traumatic experience of undergoing a painful operation on his leg as a young boy, and how this experience may have played on the psychological developments. Bill's important study continues to provoke discussion and controversy. Gary Topping, past archivist for the Catholic Diocese in Utah, is a historian's historian. He has done seminal work on the lives of Western historians in their own historical studies. Gary's skillful treatment of the challenge of such endeavors is fascinating and engaging. Mike Homer details his work on Mormonism's connection to Italy and foreign tourists to Brigham Young's Mormon Zion, and Mormonism's relationship to Masonry. Rick Grunder, a rare book dealer whose erudite, informative catalogs are a genuine delight to read, gives intimate detail about his adventures in finding long-lost important newspapers, letters, broadsides, and books. His essay reads like a Saturday matinee adventure movie. Until he retired, Bruce Van Orden worked for the LDS Church educational system. His chapter details the challenges such employment can create for the scholarly historian. Bruce also candidly discusses an especially painful experience in his life as an LDS historian. I am proud to feature three historians from the newer generation of scholars. Matt Bowman describes his writing The Mormon People, an important book, much needed new survey of Mormon history for the general public. Condon Smith Hansen details his frontier religion as a look of early Mormonism. His intimate story of friendship with and mentorship under Valine Tippett Avery, co-author of the path-breaking biography of Emma Smith, Mormon Enigma, is equally memorable and touching. Val's co-author, Linda King Newell, described their experience in the first volume of Writing Mormon History. Taylor Petrie chronicles the story of writing his award-winning book, Tabernacles of Clay, 2020, an important study of gender and sexuality in modern Mormonism. I invited Gary James Bajera to write about the history of BYU independent newspaper, the Seventh East Press. Though not a work of Mormon history per se, this short-lived 1981-83 paper impacted future writers of Mormon history, and in my opinion, deserves scrutiny. Gary wrote a column for the paper during the first year and recalls the press fondly. I hope that his essay serves as an invitation for others to document this important period. Dean Huffaker graciously wrote a companion piece to Gary's essay about his experience with the Seventh East Press and its role in his intellectual formative years. I thank each of these authors who contributed to the book. I suspect it was not always easy for some to write about intimate life experiences, and I admire them for their courage in being honest and open. Perhaps because they are historians, they understand the importance of sharing their lives and their formative experience with readers. I also thank Signature Books for helping me to shepherd this second volume from conception to publication. I am honored I am honored by their trust in me. This book is now in the hands of readers because Signature's incredible team.
We love signature. Thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you, Rick, for tolerating me.
So we're going to give away a copy of Writing Mormon History Volume 1 now. I guess that's not part of the official title, but it is the first volume. Go to gospeltangents.com/contest. You can get this freshly autographed copy right here. I'm going to get him to sign mine after this too. And also on, it says here October 28th, pre-order your copy today. Hardback is $35.95. The ebook is $9.99. You can get that at signaturebooks.com. I'm sure Amazon will have it on pre-order.
Yeah.
Go to Benchmark, support Chris Bench.
Yeah.
It'll probably be autographed. Anyway, all the places you go. It's so great to talk to you, Joe, as always.
Oh, Rick,
you're just such a. I don't think I've told people this. When we were in Independence, I needed a place to record. I was interviewing Todd Compton, and Joe said, "Take my hotel room. We'll do a late checkout." And so, thank you. People probably don't know that, but I really appreciate that. Yeah. So that was awesome.
No, I'm glad, and that was a great interview, and Todd had a great time.
Todd was awesome. The only problem was he left his sport coat in my car. He didn't get it back. But anyway, so thanks again. Get your Writing Mormon History 1 and 2, and we'll have to talk to you again because it's always fun to talk to Joe.
Well, thanks, Rick. Thanks so much.
Thanks for being on Gospel Tangents.
Have a great night.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Joe Geisner. He's the editor of Writing Mormon History 1 and 2, and Volume 2 is coming out here shortly. It'll be more orange instead of green here. And so good luck with that. I think it's going to be a great book. In our next conversation, I'm excited to have a new book out, This Abominable Slavery, by Paul Reeve, Legene Carruth, and Christopher Rich. Is this a Mythbusters here? It might be. Because I've also heard that, slavery and servitude, this is just semantics, right? They're really slaves. Utah is the only slave state west of the Mississippi. Is that true?
False.
Thanks for listening, and I hope you to continue to enjoy Gospel Tangents. Consider becoming a Patreon or go to gospeltangents.com/shop, and you can get a cool tie, a hat, or even a nice mug. You can also get a sweatshirt. So check it out at gospeltangents.com/shop.